am one of the, let me just click the recording piece here. I'm one of the career educators at the Division of Career Pathways on campus, and Caesar invited me here today to share with you more information about what you can do to best prepare for our upcoming career fairs. And I know you're all transfer students. And so a lot of transfer students I've worked with in the past are on top of it, eager to get going in terms of looking for internships, looking for opportunities to connect with different experiences and employers in the community. And that's really where our office comes into play, is to help make you as successful as possible as potential candidates and find good places to connect and learn about opportunities. If you do have any questions, please feel free to jump in and ask them as we go along. If you would like to come off mute, I welcome that. Please interrupt me if something's not clear. If you feel more comfortable with asking in the chat, feel free to do that as well. And if I don't see it right away, I'll definitely catch it at one of the pauses. I'll look at the chat here and there. So feel free to ask questions. I do want to make this as useful to you as possible. So if you have a question, probably someone else does as well. So don't hesitate to ask as we go along. So first of all, for those of you new to UCI, and I'd be interested in kind of knowing, because we do have a small in-person audience today, would you just put in the chat the current year you'll be this upcoming fall, as well as your field of study as well? And that would help me get a sense what you might be looking for in terms of internships, full-time positions, and in what areas.
So wait, I'm sorry. Do you mean like for transfer students? Like, exactly. Are we coming in as juniors?
Yes, exactly. Are you a junior? So you're kind of looking at internships. Are you, if you're a transfer student, but a senior looking for full-time jobs? I'd just be interested in learning.
I've always been a little confused as a transfer student coming in, figuring out what comparable level I'm coming into as. So I'm assuming I'm a junior.
So it's your first year at UCI though?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. And what discipline, what area of engineering?
Biomedical pre-med.
Awesome. Oh, good for you. Yes. So you're busy. Biomedical pre-med. Thank you. Thank you so much. So probably internships is what I'm guessing you'd be looking at exploring.
I assume so. Those are the stereotypes that I hear, but I don't have a great grasp.
Sure. Well, and you could look at a lot of things, research, all kinds of things. So thank you, Justin. Nice to meet you. Okay. And I see someone else is popping in. I'll be a third year mechanical engineering major in the fall. Excellent. So we have biomedical with pre-med, mechanical engineering. Any other areas? Okay. Oh, Erica. Okay. I haven't met Erica yet. Okay. So I didn't recognize your name. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. Perfect, Caesar. So I will dive in. And focus a little bit more on the internship end, but it really relates to looking for jobs as well. So just to give you an overview of what to expect for this fall at UCI in terms of career fairs. And I think this is important because we have been all over the map with a combination of virtual, trying some small in-person events, etc. But this is the plan for fall. So we will have our first major career fair week 1 on campus. And so that's our fall career fair. It is going to be a wide variety of the types of employers. We invite anyone to participate. It will be in person on Ring Road. And so you can see it's scheduled for September 29th. And it'll be, you won't miss it if you're walking on Ring Road, because there'll be lots of booths, as many as we can fit into the space between kind of the student center and then going up towards social sciences, social ecology, and that area will all be booths for that event. And then the following week, we are offering a virtual fall career fair. And so that will be hosted on Handshake. And I'll talk more about how you can interact on a virtual fair and how you can kind of interact successfully on a virtual fair. And then probably the one I would guess that this particular population, being engineering, will be most interested is our STEM career fair, which is October 13th. And that will be an in-person event, and it's going to be hosted in the Student Center. So we'll talk more about that. It's traditionally our largest career fair. A lot of employers love to come to UCI and talk with STEM students. So it's a great opportunity for you all, given the major that you are. And additionally, we will have a graduate school fair. And a graduate school fair is where graduate schools, and that could be law schools, medical schools, any general graduate schools, will come and talk about the graduate programs they have available, and with the intention of recruiting UCI students to apply and enroll in their programs. So that will culminate at the end of October, be in person on Ring Road as well. So I just wanted to give you an overview so some are in person, but also we do have one virtual. And the reason for that is because we did some surveying of employers, and while a lot want to come back on campus, some were kind of like, I think we'd just prefer or only participate if it's virtual. So we're kind of offering a little bit of everything. And then based on how things go this fall, we'll kind of assess and see what we intend to do during winter quarter. So let's dive into the fair itself. And I'll be honest, we haven't done a fair on Ring Road for a long time. So a lot of the pictures on these slides showcase what it looks like inside the Student Center, which is probably most parallel to what the STEM career fair will look like. But our first fair going on during week 1 will be on Ring Road. So you can envision how that might be a little bit different on Ring Road, those interactions. So it's good to think about before the fair, kind of what do you want to get out of it? What are your objectives? And, definitely, I think a lot of people think about career fairs as, I want to find a job. I want to find an internship, but there's a lot of other good reasons to go to a fair. It gives you that chance to connect with, people in the real world, to potential employers, even if you're not looking yet. Maybe you don't have time next summer or in your schedule to have an opportunity, but you maybe like to learn about, well, what could I do down the road with my mechanical engineering degree, my aerospace degree? I want to ask them a question about what makes the most qualified candidates at your company, and learn from that, so that by the time I'm looking for those opportunities, I will be able to put some of those recommendations that they mentioned in play, so that I can join a club, become a leader, or do whatever they mentioned would be something that would stand out in the application process. So it's a great time to network. It's a great time to see what are career options out there and ask those kinds of questions about, what they have to offer at their particular company. We definitely get a mix of companies at our events, and some will be household names that you've heard of. And then some will be companies maybe you haven't heard as much about. So you could learn about what is their product or what is their service, and even kind of compare what is it like to work for a small company or startup company versus a large major organization, and get that sense. So before the fair, some things that you can do to be really ready and successful are, first of all, research who is attending the event. And I'm going to be popping onto Handshake later on today and kind of showing you exactly step by step how you can research companies who are attending. Now, there's a lot of reasons to do research of who's attending. First of all, you want to find out who do you want to prioritize? Who do you definitely want to talk to at the event? You might see at the STEM career fair, we have, 100 employers, and it might be hard to talk to even, a fifth of those employers. So you might need to prioritize. These are the 5 or 4 tables I want to make sure I talk to while I'm there. So researching in advance will be very helpful for that. You can also see what positions they have posted. I'll be honest, there are some companies now that have signed up for the fair, but they haven't yet posted all their positions. But closer to the time of the fair, we try to nudge and encourage them to post their open positions. So you'll be able to research that before talking with them. And then you could ask good questions when you go up to their table and mention how you read about their internship in XYZ area and you'd like to learn more about it. Now, you will stand out if you've done your research. A company can kind of tell how familiar you are with who they are or what they have to offer. And so if you can go up and already have those really basic questions answered by doing some preliminary research, that'll really make you stand out in a positive way. So we always encourage you to do that. Other things to do before the event. So at the career fair, you are, if it's an in-person event, you are able to introduce yourself in person, and we'll talk about how to introduce yourself in just a moment. But usually then you'll offer at some point during the conversation your resume. And so we do recommend that this would be a great time to update your resume, have it looked over. You could make an appointment with one of us at the Division of Career Pathways, and we make all of our appointments through Handshake right now. We will start drop-in advising during week 1, but right now you can make appointments on Handshake to have your resume looked at prior to the career fairs. So you can also think about, depending on where most of you are looking for internships, I know. So some of the internships might be selecting more at the time of the year around January, February time, but it's still good to start that networking now in the fall, even if they say, oh, we're going to be accepting applications in January, still make that connection with employers and learn more about how the process will work at this stage. I should also mention that first general career fair, the fall career fair. I know I said it's for everyone and it's diverse. I would, as an engineer, still look at who's attending that event because we certainly still get some STEM-focused employers attending the general fall career fair. Yes, we have a dedicated career fair for STEM in October, but depending on their hiring needs or their schedule, they may come to our fall career fair. And sometimes a company will choose to come to both fairs. So you may want to investigate that one as well to see what opportunities would exist there. Other things, we'll talk about how you introduce yourself, how you walk up to a table at a fair. And there are, I know it's kind of nerve-wracking to walk up to a table. So there are some best practices of good ways to introduce yourself. And that's coming up on my next slide. And then you do want to prepare good questions that you could ask them to hopefully start that conversation and learn about opportunities and have it benefit you as much as possible. And then also developing a game plan. What that means is that these events can get very busy, and so there might be lines at some of the popular companies, especially those companies that have, big names and so forth. So you might want to have a little bit of strategy about that. So if you want to talk to a company that probably will have a big line, you may want to think about, coming on the early end, so that you can be early in line and not have to wait a long time, or as long as if you come later. If you have flexibility in your schedule that day, to think about how you could time it around, classes and things like that as well. So, some people also say, and this just depends on you, if it maybe warm up, talk to a company that's not your number one first, and so that you get used to introducing yourself, et cetera, before you go to that company. You're really wanting to make a strong first impression and stand out. You can talk with multiple people at the event. So those are some things to think about in cultivating your own personal kind of strategy or game plan for the fair. So I want to talk about the introduction. So when you are approaching an employer, what kind of information do you want to share, and how can you make that best first impression? So some of the things that you want to try to hit on are, first of all, answering the question of who you are. So share your name, share your class year. And that could be, as I think John introduced himself, so I'm a third year student or a junior at UCI. I'm studying, and mentioning your major. Also, you could indicate what you're seeking. If you're looking for learning about a particular industry, if you're seeking an internship during the summer, maybe a internship during the academic year, a full-time job, you can indicate that. And then ideally, you want to focus on, how, what you're going to contribute, what you can offer to them. So maybe showcasing that you've had maybe a relevant experience. You've been part of a organization on campus, or, down the road, your senior design project, and it relates to what you're applying for. Maybe highlighting a skill, like AutoCAD or something like that, that's relevant to what the work they do, and you've had some experience in that. And then try to end the introduction with a question, so that it like bounces the ball back in their court if you're playing tennis. So you're introducing yourself, you're giving them some information, and then you want to ask them more about the internship, or more about maybe locations they're offering their summer opportunities, or whatnot. So whatever kind of questions you have. So here's a sample. And, this is long and lengthy, so it doesn't have to have all these pieces, but just to kind of give you a sense of introducing your name. My name is John Zaro. I'm a senior in the School of Social Ecology. I'll be graduating in June with a degree in psychology and social behavior, and we'll be looking for a full-time position in the counseling field. And then they're kind of focusing in on them a little bit. I'm interested in your company because of this reason. So that's where that research can really make you stand out. So if you can say, I'm really interested in, the work you do in this area, then they'll know, oh, who we are and what we do, especially if they're a company that's not a household name, and, not everyone would know what they do or their product. Then tying it into why you're a good candidate. So I'm currently doing an internship on campus, or I'm currently working alongside a graduate student on their research on this area, or assisting someone on their senior design project, or whatever it happens to be, or working on this project in one of my classes. You could mention specific skills that you have that relate to the position. And then again, it's kind of ending the introduction with a question. Do you have any internship opportunities available this summer in your LA office or whatnot? So other things to keep in mind when you introduce yourself. So, I want you to be yourself. I mean, above all else, above all these tips, I think you're going to perform best if you can find a sense of calmness, so that you're not too nervous and you can just be authentic and be yourself. And that's going to be the best. It's going to be you at your best, right? When people are really nervous, they tend to talk really fast, and then it's hard to understand you, or they get off track or they ramble and things like that. And that's normal. So don't worry if that happens, but try as much as yourself to, take some deep breaths, practice your introduction so that you can go in confident to this interaction. We do recommend having eye contact with the person you're talking to. I know when you're outside, especially on Ring Road, there's so many distractions going on, and you don't have to have constant eye contact. You can definitely naturally look away, but at some points it's good to have eye contact. If they are talking to you, you want to be responsive in your body language of listening, shaking your head, nodding when appropriate. Maybe they insert some humor. That's good. It's okay to smile or laugh if that's appropriate. They may so I'm curious what happens with handshakes this fall. I'll be honest with you, because of COVID and everything. And it's your comfort level too, how you feel about handshakes. This will be interesting to see. I feel like there weren't as many in-person interactions last year, so we weren't seeing, the handshakes happening pre-COVID. Usually you would start off your introduction with a handshake and extend your hand out to have a nice, confident handshake. I think there's going to be much more grace on people that prefer not to shake hands and don't want to do that. So I personally, what I would do is probably do some observation and see kind of what's happening. And you might want to have some hand sanitizer in your pocket or your bag if you do choose to shake hands. But I don't think anyone's going to fault you if you opt not to as well. But that's where the eye contact would probably even be more important. Like, hello, it's very nice to meet you. If you're not shaking hands. There will be usually a time that you offer your resume. It's usually not the first thing you do. I would prefer that you introduce yourself first, because what happens is when you give a person your resume and you offer it to them, right away, they're going to stop looking at you and now look down at the paper. And I want them to really be listening to what you're saying and not reading at the same time. So start that conversation, and then towards the end, or if they ask you a little bit, can you share more about your experience? Then you could offer, I do have a copy of my current resume if you'd like to view the experiences or the skills or the classes or whatever you want to highlight on there. And then you could offer them a copy of your resume. Other things, so knowing your audience, you may talk at career fairs with a variety of people. It could be a human resources representative. That is not going to be the person that hires you. It might not even be an engineer, but they have had enough training to kind of know the skills that they are seeking for their company. So they might introduce themselves as, oh, I'm in human resources, which basically means a lot of times at a career fair, they do the hiring process or the first round of that hiring assessment. And then they would pass a good candidates along to the managers who you'd probably be working for. Some companies will actually send the hiring managers. They will send their engineers. Some companies like to send recent graduates of UCI because they feel like that would have a really good connection with current students. So it can really vary, I would say, who you're talking to at the event. And so some might be very young, kind of new to the company. Others might be in human resources and quite a bit older. So it can vary basically of who you're talking to. So keep that in mind. And that's kind of why the everyday language is in there. If you hear it, someone in human resources, I'm not saying you have to, really scale down what your projects, because they are probably pretty savvy in listening for keywords and key skills and so forth. But they might not, be in the field directly. I'm going to, I think, pause. I don't think I'm going to have you practice right now, but I'm happy if at the end you would want to kind of practice what you would want to include in that introduction or that pitch of yourself. Happy to do that. Let's talk about like presenting yourself. Okay. So what's interesting about this is that we are moving back to some in-person events. So when you are attending a fair in general, we do encourage students to think about what kind of industry that they're going into. Some industries are very casual, and you can probably even approach the career fair in a casual format. Others might be more dressy in their work or what they do every day. I will say our outdoor fairs tend to be a little bit more casual than our indoor fairs. And part of that is due to we tend to get a lot of heat around the time of, week one or so, and it can be really hot to walk around in really dressed up clothing. But the student center should be, a little bit cooler by October time and so forth. I will say it's nice, though, to think about your appearance or how you present yourself as someone that's intentionally coming to the fair versus someone that's on their skateboard, scooting by on the way to class, and then you saw someone and you want to stop and talk with them. Not that that's bad, but I think they'll be able to tell those students that have intentionally researched, that are coming maybe, a little more dressed up than every day they would approach classes and so forth, to intentionally talk to employers and to like working professionals at the career fair. But we want you to be comfortable. We want you to be your best, that authentic self, but as much as possible, maybe being neat, clean. Maybe this is not the day to wear jeans with lots of holes or shirts that might have, controversial expressions, things like that on it. So just kind of thinking about that, but also thinking about who you're talking to as well. And so it's usually safe to be fairly simple and on the conservative side, if in case you want to talk to someone you weren't expecting to at that event or at that fair. And any of us at the Division of Career Pathways, and I'm sure your advisors too, would be happy to talk with you if you're not sure, and you want to be safe for what would be appropriate. I would say at our indoor events, traditionally, there will be a lot of students in like blouses, shirts, ties, dress pants, some people in full suits at that event. I will say probably less of that at the outdoor event, but we'll probably still see some of that. Business casual, which is kind of a step down from like a full suit, is usually very acceptable as well at these events. And that could be like a button-up shirt with nice dress pants. It could be, a sweater or some kind of nice blouse with, pants, something you're comfortable in and you can really be yourself in is typically what we see at these events. So during the fair itself, we talked about introducing yourself and introducing yourself with confidence, showing that you've done your research. And you can do that by showcasing that in your introduction, a little bit about, I'm interested in, something about what the company does, or you're interested in something about the internship program that you read about. Ask good questions, have questions prepared. If you want it, you could write down your questions in advance and have those on a notepad so that you can make sure you remember, or you have different questions for different companies. That's awesome to do. I encourage that. And it'll show you're taking this really seriously, you prepared, and they'll see that. At the end of the interaction, you could always ask for if they have a business card, so you have the name of the individual. If they don't have a business card, it's a great idea to have that notepad just to write down the name of who you talk to, because sometimes it is good to loop back to thank a recruiter, and it's impressive if you know who you talk to at the event. And let's say they told you some information such as, oh, we're here today recruiting for this full-time role, but our internships will open up in mid-November. Jot down notes like that, because it's so easy to forget the details or which company said what. So in between your conversations with different companies, it's a great idea to jot down notes so that you remember all these things. So I've mentioned you want to ask them questions and you can prepare questions. So what are some examples of what questions might, be that you could ask? And, here's some basic places to start. Of course, as you do your research, these questions can probably be more refined, more customized to who you're talking to. But these questions are things such as even, simply if you can't find it on their website or they don't have it posted on Handshake, ask if they have an internship program, what their time frame is like for their internships. You could ask about what kind of projects in the past interns have worked on. That shows like interest in kind of learning about like what could you do potentially in that kind of role. You could ask about what they like most about working for the organization. And that's always a good question because people like to talk about themselves and their experiences. And so it kind of puts that on them to be thoughtful and think about, gosh, yeah, what has my experience been like with the company? And they could share some tidbits of that. And that's not something you can read about on a website as easily. Yes, there might be testimonials, but it's still something that's going to be unique for every person. So asking those kinds of questions that you can only get through like a personal interaction is a great idea. You could also ask questions about like the work culture, and maybe through your research, you've learned a little bit. Maybe they have, really a lot of affinity groups at their workplace, or you can tell it's a priority for them to incorporate diversity, inclusion, and equity in their work. And you could ask questions about that. I read about this, and I'd love to hear more of what that looks like from an employee perspective or in action at the company or the organization. You could ask what skills will help you be successful as a candidate as well. And that's especially good, even if you're not looking right yet for the role. Pick their brains about what could I do in my next 2 years that, would really make me a strong candidate for your company when I graduate. I'm going to transition and talk a little bit about virtual fairs because we're still doing virtual fairs as well. And it's a little bit of a different approach than the in-person kind of piece. And there's some logistical things with Handshake. So the next few slides has some tips on that. But I'd be, of course, happy to chat also still about the in-person things as well. But so our virtual fairs, as I mentioned, they're hosted on Handshake. So how it works is, because you're not going in person, you can in advance sign up for either group sessions with a company or an employer. And as you can see, some of the details, up to 50 students can be in a room with a company. And usually they have a presentation that they tell students as a group all about their company and about their openings. And then there's some time for questions from the group. There's also something, though, you can sign up for called one-on-one sessions. And that's where you have 10-minute window where you individually will, be on, like, it's not Zoom, it's a Handshake. Well, sometimes they have a Zoom link, but they also have a Handshake portal where you will be on video, just like on Zoom, chatting live with the employer. I recommend going on early, being ready in that waiting room, because you only have 10 minutes. And usually they have student on top of students. So you want to be ready so you can maximize those 10 minutes. And so you also want to think about your priority. If you have like a couple kind of key questions, maybe reduce your introduction a little bit, so you can kind of make the most of that time with employers. So in order to take advantage of those group sessions or the one-on-one sessions, they're all through Handshake. And this is kind of what it looks like to sign up. You select the company that you want a one-on-one time, and then you sign up for that exact time slot. Like, I'm going to at 10:10 talk with that employer. And a few things to do in advance. It's helpful to have a complete Handshake profile in advance. Just to make sure you have the right, audio and video. It's great to set your privacy settings to community for the fair, because sometimes that's been an issue for students trying to log in to talk to employers for those one-on-one sessions. You can always switch your settings back after if you wish. And how it works is like the day of, you're going to have like a button essentially for anything you've signed up for in advance. A button will appear for you to join the session. And it's pretty intuitive at that point. So whether you attend a virtual or an in-person session, before I go on for that, I just want to say one thing about virtuals. It is still good to look at who's coming to the virtual fairs. And I say this because I think there are going to be some employers that are more nationally based that maybe can't travel to campus as easily, but still have really good opportunities. And historically, not every session has been full. So usually there's opportunities to sign up for those one-on-one sessions and so forth in advance. And then there's no waiting. So if you have a 10:10 time with an employer, you can log in early, get on, and you're done. So it's much less of a time commitment of your day than it is to go to a fair where you have to be, dressed and have your resume and all of those things ready. It's a little bit easier in terms of that time commitment. I do recommend having, ready anything if you'd want to, drop a copy of your resume electronically in your chat, you could do that. However, it's still worth looking at who's attending and seeing if anyone attending is of appeal to you. But now focusing on what you can do after the fair in terms of, again, still setting yourself up for that success. So it's a great idea if you had a good conversation with someone to follow up with them. You can follow up with them in a variety of ways. You can, look them up on LinkedIn and request to be connected with them there and send a message that you enjoyed talking with them at the UCI Career Fair this fall. Thanking them for their time to attend, and you'd love to stay connected or in touch. You could also send an email. And if you have any follow-up questions or wanted to send an updated resume, you could do that via email as well. Now, they might have given you guidance and said, oh, to find our positions, go ahead and go to our website or go to Handshake and apply. And of course, if they gave you that guidance, investigate that, check that out. And if you have questions, loop back with them. And then just kind of keep proactive. And I always like to mention that career fairs are just one way to find opportunities. A lot of employers do not attend career fairs and have amazing opportunities as well. And so if you are not seeing like your dream employers or the kinds of places you want to be working, do not get discouraged. There's a lot of other ways to apply for those opportunities. So this is not the be all end all of how you find jobs and internships is career fairs. It's one way, and it's definitely highly successful for a lot of our students, but it's not the only way. And a lot of students find great opportunities through other forums as well. But by doing all this practice and getting your resume, you'll be ready for all those other interactions too. So as I mentioned, like if you want your resume reviewed, or if you just want to like wrap your head around like, what is my job search process or internship search process? What should that look like this year? Or just to kind of chat anything career related, you're always welcome to make an appointment through Handshake with one of us. We will start drop-in advising week 1 of the quarter as well. And drop-in advisings will be Tuesday through Thursday, kind of in the midday, and that's 12 to 2 without an appointment. You can always stop by to talk to someone briefly. And we also host many like workshops and events and other kinds of ways to engage with employers. If you do have, you know, other kinds of interest areas, such as like if you want to go to a workshop on how to set up a LinkedIn profile, or if you want to learn more about networking and practice networking, or specifics on things like interviewing skills. We have a lot of those types of workshops live. We have many recorded too on our website. So we want to make sure you get the information you need to maximize your potential, right? To be successful. And then, so that's really our goal in all of this process. And that is our website, career.uci.edu. That's how you'll find Handshake. That's how you'd find like recorded workshops, anything, sample resumes, anything that you may need related to the career process would be available on there. And I want to, again, I put this in twice because I thought it would be good to revisit. It's just our fall career fairs. So we start again, week 1 with the in-person fall fair. Then we toggle over to a virtual fair. And then our in-person STEM fair will be October 13th. So those are the big employer related events in the fall. Now it says scan to register. You certainly can register on Handshake. For the virtual fair, you need to register in order to sign up for sessions. For the in-person fairs, I'll be honest, you can just show up and you don't really need to worry about it. So I want to pause for a minute to see if there are any questions. And I am then going to pop over to Handshake. And I'm looking at the chat. I don't think I see any questions there. Well, if questions come up, don't hesitate to either come off mute or you can put them in the chat. While I'm here, I'll just show you, this is our general website. If you haven't been there yet, just so you're familiar with what it looks like. There are several ways to get to Handshake. Like honestly, if you click on like go to events, go to job postings. That's all going to lead to Handshake, essentially. Underneath this umbrella of undergraduates, here's where you'll find a lot of, how you meet with us. This will direct you, for example, of how to go onto Handshake and meet with a career educator. It'll have a little bit more about our drop-in sessions. And again, all roads lead back typically to Handshake. It also, I did want to just focus for a moment on resume and cover letters. There's great information in here. So if you wanted specifically to, look at samples of cover letters, of resumes, feel free to browse through our samples, and you can find even by school. So if you wanted to look specifically at engineering samples, go ahead and you can open these up and borrow ideas, see how they list projects, see how they list skills, things like that. That's why it's all in there. And then there's other information about like format, and I love this one. Let me see if it comes up quickly. Action verbs, to incorporate on your resume and on your document. Lots of good information like that. So feel free to play around on this site. I'll show you one other piece. So in this career guide section, I mentioned we have a lot of our workshops recorded. If you go to our webinar video library, you will see we do have a lot of sessions that are recorded on different areas. For example, on different areas of resumes, we have tech resume specifics. If you just wanted to dive into that, or just resume basics, etc. So feel free to take advantage of any of this that would be useful for whatever your questions are right now and whatever you're kind of working on right now. Okay. And now I'm just going to hop over to Handshake. So I just want you to be comfortable and familiar with how to find the career fair information. So this is probably somewhat what your home profile will look like on Handshake. The first time you go in, if you haven't already, it will prompt you to fill out some basic profile information. So that's just, it's kind of like a lot of websites. It kind of does that the first time. It is, the importance for Handshake is that you will be hopefully receive more customized things that align with who you are, meaning like your major or your interests or your year in school, if you do fill out areas of that profile. Jobs are where, if you're looking right now for a part-time job, maybe you have work study, if you need to, even if you don't have work study, but you need to work on campus, you could find that here. This is also where you search for, I'll go ahead and open it up. It's also where you search for internships. It's for full-time jobs, anything. So I tend to use this filter piece a lot. So you could kind of select what you're looking for. Are you looking for an internship? Are you looking for one of those on-campus jobs? And then you can scroll down and, specifically choose, like if you wanted to put in a specific kind of role, a specific kind of industry. And I'm sorry, my screen is so, it's hard to see them all, but there are industries in here that you can play around with and select. So you can find what really appeals to you in your areas. So there's a lot of specifics in there. Employers. Now, if you really wanted to, you're from Carlsbad area, you want to go work at Viasat, that appeals to you. Click on it. If you are really interested in electric cars and Rivian's based here locally, type in Rivian, and so you'll kind of see what comes up for whatever search that you're doing, if they have any current jobs and so forth. I don't know, I might have not selected it because it's not coming up right away, but that is how I typically use the filter. But I want to focus on the career fair piece. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but let me open up the career fair piece. So I'm going to pop over from jobs to events. And from events, you're going to find, you can search in a couple ways. You could look at like what's going on right now, this week, this month. But you can also specifically find career fairs here. Now we do under events, as you can see, include things like workshops. We include like there's a workshop coming up, how to find a part-time job. We're going to be having some welcome events during welcome weeks. You're going to see a lot of those listed here. We have interview techniques. We have a lot of the part-time jobs. We're going to have managing your mental health during a job search. Are you LinkedIn? Preparing for the virtual career fair, specifically preparing for the in-person STEM fair. You're getting a jump start on that. So that's awesome. We're going to have a resume lab where you work on your resume and can get guidance in person while you're working on it. So some different events like that. I want to pop over to the career fair. And so you can kind of see right here, a lot of those events that I mentioned, they're all kind of categorized separately: the virtual fall fair, the in-person fall fair, and I'm just going to go ahead and click on our STEM fair. So what you're going to see here is information about, well, this is the details of like the event and what's going on. It's on the 13th, etc. But I want to click on all employers. So you'll see the employers that have already registered for the event. I don't know why it's not letting me. Oh, here we go, maybe. Oh, okay, I'm going to go this way. This is very strange because I practiced this before we came on. I don't know why it's not letting me see all of our employers. What am I doing? Oh my goodness.
It doesn't always fix it, but if you try right-clicking and opening in a new tab, maybe.
Okay. Okay. Let me try. Handshake is finicky. And I'd be the first to say that. So let's see if that helps. Oh, still didn't. Okay, I'm going to go back to another event. I don't know why it's doing that. But thank you for that suggestion. That's super weird. I'm going to go back to career fairs. That is usually how you do it, though. Let's see if our STEM fair is being, or our in-person fall fair is being more cooperative. And it is not. Well, I will describe usually what happens. I am not sure why. Let me click on this one though up here. Okay, I will inquire about that. My apologies. Usually what's going to happen is all the employers who are attending, they come up over here on the right, and there's like a brief description of what the company is. And then you have to click into it to see like their job openings and positions, etc. Again, I'm not sure if this is a user error or a handshake error, but I can find that information out in case it's a user error and there's another way to guide you. But I'll ask our employer relations team who works closely with Handshake, because right now they're pretty active on getting all these folks at these registered for these events right now. But that's kind of where you can do the research typically. I'm sorry that I can't demo that for you right now, but on who's coming, you can favorite them. So if you wanted to go back specifically, you can follow. There's a lot of different features that you can do. keep in mind, so Handshake allows you to upload your documents like resumes. You can set one as public. And so they're not going to see all the documents, but anything that you set as like public, they would be able to have access to. So sometimes if you do that and you follow an employer, they might send you an email, prior to the event, like, oh, be sure to stop by our booth and introduce yourself or something like that. So they will have access if you choose to set certain things like that public in advance. Just to be aware of that, but you can certainly manage your own privacy settings so that they, can see what you want them to see or not want them to see in advance. And I should also mention, most people, they don't get a job necessarily from the career fair. It's like a start of the networking process, I would say, and usually would lead to an interview or something like that. And so there are rare cases where sometimes we hear of like some mini interviews happening at a career fair, but for the most part, that's not usually the purpose of the fair. It's the introduction, the networking, and that would lead you to apply and to go through their process of interviewing, et cetera, for the position. But my apologies that I am not having luck with this piece of it. But aside from that, let me see if there are any questions, whether it has to do with, resumes, preparing, or anything to do with the career fair as a whole. This was the main part of, what I wanted to share with you in the presentation piece. But I want to see what kinds of questions you all may have. I'll stop sharing for a minute so I can see you all if you wanted to ask any questions. Do you feel ready to go?